Welcome back to Trading 360. It's time for the 360 round. We're looking at semiconductors, focusing on ARM, right? A big one there. Had a huge move after its quarterly numbers. You have NVIDIA, new highs. Kim Forrest is with us, founder, chief investment officer at Boca Capital Partners, and Olivier Blanchard is with us, research director at Futurum Group. Thank you both for being with us. So, Kim, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the group, and you also write that ChatGPT is a, quote, parlor trick. So you'll have to tell us a little bit about that too.
Well, I hope the audience knows what a parlor trick is. I had to explain this to a younger person who I deal with, and I was like, wow, you don't know what that is. So what it is something that seems more than what it is, like a magic trick, right? So why is ChatGPT a magic trick? Well, it's a large language model that is using statistics and something called a neural network to be able to answer questions and sound as if it's a human, but it is not. It cannot think, it cannot feel, all of those kind of higher order thought processes. It doesn't have. It's great at retrieval and being able to match patterns. So that's what that means. And I think AI, by and large, is a little bit of a parlor trick, but when applied to a value-adding solution, it's like magic. You can get more out of your time and thus probably higher productivity if you're using something like ChatGPT to help you write something.
Right, understood. And I want to hear about which names you think may be using AI in the better way. But I see what you're saying, because there have been things that have come and gone or maybe seemed like a bigger deal than they actually were, that kind of stuff. Olivier, tell me what's behind what we've seen. For example, ARM had an incredible week after its quarterly numbers. And which companies are benefiting right now?
Yeah, ARM crushed it. And I think, it's reflective of whether it's a parlor trick or not, at least the interest in the market and all the opportunities for AI. Obviously, the semiconductor space is almost entirely driven, or at least the growth and the interest in it right now is almost entirely driven by AI, both in the cloud for the very large applications and training and inference models, and also on the edge, right? We're seeing AI that's already been in devices like mobile phones and computers take more of a forward role in solving problems and automating a lot of tasks that were difficult to automate intelligently before. So that's driving that. And also we're seeing it in automotive with all kinds of systems, including ADAS, where obviously on-device intelligence is pretty important to help the car steer itself and help drivers be safer. But I think, the top beneficiaries, I think, for ARM on the obvious side are going to be companies like Qualcomm and Apple that have based a lot of their solutions on ARM architecture, but also AMD, NVIDIA, AWS Cloud, Microsoft, and then somewhat less obvious of a list, you also have Synopsys, Cadence, Intel, Samsung Semi, Micron, Oracle. So they're kind of everywhere. And the fact that ARM produces, or at least has created, an architecture for chips that allows these chips to be extremely high performance, but with a low power signature. Essentially, it's kind of like, a really good performance per watt makes them ideal because they're thermally efficient and they last longer on the same battery charge. That's really important.
Yeah, understood. I mean, when we look at the beneficiaries of what has gone on with ARM, you said some of the obvious were Qualcomm, Apple, AMD, NVIDIA, Taiwan Semi, AWS Cloud, and Microsoft. What do you think of that? Does that seem on point to you, Kim?
It seems absolutely on point, and I love that the electric power was brought up, that is always a concern in any kind of mobile device or even a device that's in a car. You don't want it to suck up too much power, right? And I think that's super important. But I agree to that whole list that he gave of beneficiaries. Yeah. I think too, like AI it may be a parlor trick, but it's real, right? And it's going to take a long time to play out. But I think investors need to be patient. And I too like AMD, Intel, and Micron because, well, AI takes a ton of memory or a ton of data, and data has to live somewhere, and that data lives on memory. There you go. So those are the things that I really like.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I mean, I know you've worked as a software engineer in AI, you understand its potential. So we definitely don't want to minimize AI because it seems like the biggest thing going since sliced bread. I don't know. You do have names that you do like. You still like Intel, AMD, and Micron. Kim, tell me about those names. I mean, are that's your favorite? Those are your favorites in the group, right?
Sure. Well, I'm growth at a reasonable price. So I look at some of the names like, God bless it, NVIDIA. I know that on a PE and going forward, looking forward, what it might be a good deal. But I also know that the buyers of NVIDIA, the AI, people developing AI, don't really love the price, and they are going to look for lower priced alternatives. And that's why Intel and AMD are some of my picks, is because they should be able to come up the curve and be able to offer products that compete directly with AMD at a better price. And who doesn't like something on sale?
And so, thank you for that. And Olivier, when we look at the PC and mobile, I mean, you mentioned Qualcomm because you think that's the next phase for AI, right? Moving to mobile devices. As users, how will we know? What are we benefiting from? This is the next phase, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, I think Qualcomm's been has had AI on their devices for quite some time before we really paid attention to it. But I look at this as sort of like back of the house AI and front of the house AI. So back of the house AI is the AI that you don't necessarily notice, but it makes your connection work, especially with millimeter wave, which is very complex to do. It helps your pictures get better. So a lot of the filters that you're seeing on your apps that make your video and your pictures better. That's also managed by AI. So there's been this presence, and we've had natural language interfaces on phones directly through our Qualcomm Snapdragon platform for some years. So it's a natural evolution now. But what we're seeing is as Qualcomm enters the PC space with their ARM-based X Elite solution, I think, which launches with
Yeah.
pretty much every major PC OEM in the spring, we're going to see a
Yeah.
lot more forward, like front of the house AI, where you're going to see some of the same sort of LLM training, inference work, natural language interfaces happen on the front end, and it's moving to PCs. And so
Yeah.
that's the real, I
Yeah.
think, big development for this year.
And Kim, just final thought. I mean, would you buy the group as chief investment officer? I mean, would you look at the whole group, or it really is name by name?
I love name by name because I'm a fundamental analyst. And while I think the whole group is going to rise, there are winners, clear winners. So I like what I like because I think they're well priced. And looking forward, they have a shot to outcompete the competition.
Yeah, yeah, great to see you. Kim Forrest of Boca Capital Partners, Olivier Blanchard, Futurum Group. Thank you both so much for being with us here on Trading 360.